Why you're afraid of becoming your narcissistic parent. I totally get it. And there's a fear I hear from many individuals, my clients included, who grew up with a narcissistic parent. It it could sound like this. I made a point never to become my mother. Or I'm starting to see some of their traits in me and I hate it. Or what if I'm more like them than I want to admit? And that can really shake your core. That can really raise a lot of concern. And that fear can hit deeply because it's not just about behavior, it's about identity. It's about you exploring who you are. It's about looking at a reaction, a tone, a moment of anger, a need for control, or a shutdown response, and thinking, is that them in me? And that can be super scary. And when you grew up hurt by a parent who dismissed you, criticized you, and even shamed you, maybe they even competed with you, ignored your feelings, or made you feel like love had to be earned. You had to earn it. Well, that question can feel absolutely terrifying, particularly if you've been keeping it with you for a really long time. You may be telling yourself, I can't become that. I can't treat people the way I was treated. I can't pass this on. That is intense. And I want you to just to slow down for a second because we're going to unpack, we're going to look at it. Because the fear that you might become like your narcissistic parent is painful. And it can also tell us something important. It tells us that you're aware. It tells us that you're watching yourself. It tells us that you care about the impact you have on other people. That doesn't make the fear disappear, but it does mean we need to understand what's actually happening. Well, today we are going to talk about how this fear shows up, why it can feel so intense, and how to tell the difference between repeating a pattern and recognizing a pattern, because those are not the same thing. And there's a reason why this fear hits so hard. When you grew up with a narcissistic parent, your nervous system learns the parent through watching them very closely. You learn about how they function, how they do things. You learn their moods, you learn their tones, you learn when they're about to criticize, withdraw, explode, shame you, compare you, or make everything about them. I may be hitting a whole bunch of bells right here. Bing, 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 right? And you likely know what I'm saying. And as a child, you often don't get to think, this is unhealthy. You think, how do I survive this? So you adapt. That's how you made it through. Maybe you became very careful. Maybe you became very quiet. Maybe you became high achieving. Maybe you became funny, useful, impressive, agreeable, invisible, or emotionally, you just shut down altogether. You learn what reduces danger. You also probably learned what keeps the peace. You learned what gets you the least amount of criticism, what you can do to decrease the pain. And then later in life, you may notice some of those survival responses showing up in your own behavior. You may snap when you feel overwhelmed. You may become controlling when you feel unsafe. You may shut down instead of talking. Now, you also may criticize yourself or others before anyone can criticize you. You ever do that, right? Try to beat them to the punch. You may also feel uncomfortable when someone needs too much from you. And suddenly that fear kicks in and it becomes these internal statements that are floating in your mind. Is this what they did? Am I becoming them? Did they put this inside me? That fear makes sense. But here's the important anchor. And this is repeating a learned survival response is not the same as becoming the person who harmed you. And it's critical to hear that. And a survival response is something your system learned to protect you. A personality pattern is broader, it's more rigid. It often lacks accountability, empathy, and self reflection. So when you catch yourself and you feel concern, shame, sadness, or responsibility, that matters. It means there's a reflective part of you, and that is critical. That reflective part may be scared, but it's also part of what helps you change to do it differently. The invisible mechanism becomes you absorb the climate, not just the behavior. One of the hardest parts of growing up with a narcissistic parent is that you don't just absorb what they say, you absorb the emotional climate. I bet you know what I'm saying. You absorb the rule that feelings may not be safe. You absorb the rule that mistakes may be used against you. You absorb the rule that love may disappear when you disappoint someone. You absorb the rule that image matters more than emotional truth. And you absorb the belief that you must be exceptional to be seen. That's why perfectionism is so common in children of narcissistic parents. The child learns, maybe if I do enough, achieve enough, look good enough, behave well enough, I'll finally be valued by them, or him, or her. But in a narcissistic family system, the finish line keeps moving. The goalpost keeps moving. An A isn't enough because someone else got an A. Being helpful isn't enough because it becomes expected. Being respectful isn't enough because respect often means what? Silence. Being strong isn't enough because strength means not having any needs. Total fallacy, by the way. So the child grows up with a very painful message. I have to keep proving myself. And even then, I may not be accepted. That feeling, that belief system can follow you into adulthood. You may become very hard on yourself. You may become hard on others. When you feel scared, you may feel intense discomfort. When someone sees your flaws, you may feel shame before anyone can say anything. And then when you hear your own critical tone, you may panic and you might start thinking, that sounded like my father, or that sounded like my mother. I sound like them. Right? And yes, that may be a learned echo, but an echo is not the same as your identity, as who you are. An echo means something old got activated. It gives you information. It does not define who you are. Now, let me give you an example. Imagine someone named Marcus, right? So Marcus grew up with a father who rarely showed any warmth. His father criticized his grades, his appearance, posture, tone, effort. Nothing was enough for Marcus's dad. If Marcus cried, he was weak. If he got angry, he was disrespectful. If he succeeded, the success was minimized. As an adult, Marcus becomes a parent himself. One night, his child spills something on the table after Marcus had a long day. Marcus hears himself say he hears it. Why can't you just pay attention? The room goes quiet. And inside, Marcus freezes because he knows that tone. He remembers that tone. He remembers being the child on the other side of it. Now he's flooded with shame and he thinks, I'm becoming him. But this is where the difference matters. If Marcus stops, notices, repairs, and he says, I'm sorry, that came out too harsh. You made a mistake and I got frustrated. Let's clean it up together. That is not the same pattern that's continuing unchanged. This is the new pattern trying to form. The old reaction came up, but the new self stepped in. This is where healing happens. Not because you never get activated. That's not realistic. We all get activated. Not because you never sounded like the past. That's not true. That's going to happen. Echoes happen to everybody. Healing happens when the past no longer gets the final word. For many children of narcissistic parents, distance is not about revenge. It's about nervous system recovery. When you're around a parent who repeatedly criticizes, shames, blames, competes, dismisses, or rewrites reality, your system may go right back into survival mode. You become smaller, you regress, right? You may explain too much, you may freeze, you may feel guilty before you've done anything wrong. You become hyper aware of their mood. You're watching for tone changes, for physical changes, behavioral changes. And when you leave, your body may feel relief before your mind can explain it. That relief is information. It doesn't automatically tell you what kind of relationship you should have with your parents or your parent, but it tells you that your system is reacting to something real. Many people judge themselves for feeling better with distance. They think, what kind of child feels better away from their parent? But a better question is, what was happening in the relationship that made distance feel safer than closeness? That question reduces the self-blame. That's what I want you to do. It helps you look at the pattern instead of attacking yourself for the response to the pattern. And this is also where we need to be careful, because we got to look at the difference between traits and accountability. Because many people have moments where they're defensive, self-protective, reactive, controlling, emotionally unavailable, or critical. You know what I'm saying? I bet you do. Now, that doesn't automatically make someone narcissistic. Don't do that. We don't want to use clinical terms and blow them up, right, to mean more than they actually should, or misunderstand someone. The deeper question is what happens after that moment. Can you reflect? Can you take responsibility? Can you care about the person's experience? Can you repair whatever that rupture was? Can you say, I see what I did there? Can you take that accountability? Can you tolerate the discomfort of being wrong without turning yourself into the victim? This is often where the difference tends to show up. A narcissistic pattern often protects the self-image at the expense of the relationship, of the other individual. A healing pattern protects the relationship while learning how to regulate the self. That doesn't mean it's easy. Sounded easy, right? Did it though? I don't think so, because it's not. For many adult children of narcissistic parents, accountability can feel dangerous. And this is because accountability was used to humiliate them when they were younger, right? Now, you may hear, I was hurt by what you said, as you're bad, right? It gets twisted. And you may hear feedback as attack. You may hear someone's need as criticism. That doesn't mean you're doomed to repeat the family system. Don't fall into that old belief. Don't be haunted by it. It means that your system still needs help separating feedback from shame. That separation is a major part of healing. And I'm going to give you a micro tool here. Is this an echo or a choice? Pause. I'm going to put that right on the screen, right? Is this an echo or a choice? And then I want you to pause, right? When you notice a reaction that kind of scares you, activates you, I want you to pause and ask yourself, is this an echo or is this a choice? An echo sounds like the past. It may be a tone, a sentence, a shutdown even, a criticism, or a defensive move that you learned in the family system. A choice is what you do next. You can say, that came out harsher than I wanted. I feel defensive and I need a second. I don't want to respond from that old place. Another one is, I'm sorry. Let me try that again. Ownership. This tool works because it gives you space between activation and identity. It empowers you with that choice, and that's the critical component. Instead of saying, I'm becoming them, I'd like you to replace it with, something old got activated in me. And that small shift matters. Because if your identity collapses into shame, but if it's an echo, you can respond to it. You can notice it. You can work through it. You can work with it. You can repair. And one of the most painful questions adult children of narcissistic parents ask is, did I grow up without love? Now, that question is a heavy one, and the answer is often complicated. Some parents may have provided food, housing, rides, money, or practical support, while still failing to provide emotional safety, warmth, attunement, attachment, or consistent care. So the adult feels confused, right? So as an adult, you're kind of like, I don't get it. Like something feels off. And they think, was I loved or was I managed? Those are two big distinctions. Was I cared for or was I controlled? Maybe you've asked yourself that. Was I protected or was I made responsible for my parents' image and emotions? That confusion is common when your parents' care came with shame, fear, criticism, or emotional absence. You may have received some forms of care while still being deprived of other forms of love that children need. Children need more than survival. They need to experience delight, comfort, repair, and know that it's possible. They need to be known. They need to be allowed to have feelings without losing connection. Now, when those needs, when they aren't met, the adult child you may spend years trying to name what was missing. And sometimes the fear of becoming the parent is really connected to grief. And if the grief sometimes it says, I know what that did to me. And I don't want anyone else to feel that way because of me. That grief can be painful, but it can also be a guide and it can empower you. And if you grew up with a narcissistic parent, you'll be afraid of coming like them. I want you to hear this really clear. This is important. The fear itself doesn't mean you're becoming them. Often the fear means you're aware of the injury, you're aware of the pattern, you're aware of the impact, and you're trying to make sure the pain doesn't keep moving through you into other people. That is not the same as being trapped in the past. It means something in you is trying to interrupt it. You still have echoes. They're still going to happen. Absolutely. You may still have reactions that surprise you. You may still hear old language in your head or feel old shame in your body. But echoes can be recognized, patterns can be named, repairs can be made. And the fact that you're asking questions may be one of the strongest signs that you're already doing something different. You're not wrong for being scared. You're responding to something real. And now you have language for it. I hope you enjoy this. Please comment. I'd love to hear about your experience, how you got through it, and how you manage it. And I appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe. That's always awesome. And I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.